Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Today is December 17th. For the roll call, Representative Kinner.
Here in Sheridan.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Olson.
Here.
Representative Schwartz.
Here.
Representative Summers.
Here.
Representative Walters.
Here.
Senator Agar.
Yeah, exactly. Present.
Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Hicks.
Here.
Senator Kinski.
Here.
Co-Chairman Nicholas. Co-Chairman Nicholas.
Excused. He's excused.
Chairman Bebout.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, Don, just kind of walk us through, where we're at and where we need to get done today. Just to give everybody a purview. If we get done, then what we still got to do 300. So just kind of walk us through what we need to get through today.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Let me pick up where we left off last night. I did email the committee some draft language for the Veterans Museum, both the footnote for the state parks as well as the military department. In addition, provided the available revenue for the MRG, Mineral Royalty Grant Program, over the OSLI relating to Senator Agar's proposal. There is about $8 million of revenue in that account for the biennium that has not been appropriated elsewhere. And then we did complete the local government distribution draft legislation. The chairs have taken a look at that, and we will post that for the third bill on the agenda tomorrow. I just wanted to verbally provide that. We will also send out a gov delivery for any interested parties, and that legislation will be posted on the committee's website. As far as today goes, we're on Agency 67. I believe a reasonable goal for today would be to get all the way through all agencies, including the judicial branch, as well as walking through the Section 300s. And I can do that on the screen or verbally. I think that would be a minimum goal for today. If you desire to also mark up a state capital construction bill, it would certainly lighten the load for tomorrow. On tomorrow's agenda, we have 3 bills. The fee bill, which will require a fair bit of conversation, I suspect. The state budget department legislation, which codifies the breakup of the Department of Administration and Information and the state budget department. That should be pretty quick. The local government formula, I think that's you're well familiar with that legislation. It's actually pretty short, just a couple of pages. The whole formula is not pulled in unless the committee desires. It's just a change in the available funding for the second fiscal year of this biennium, and then the round robin for tomorrow as well. So if you wanted to take up capital construction today, it would certainly lighten the load tomorrow.
All right, committee, Mr. Chairman Bebout.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Real quickly, just a comment, a couple of thoughts I had this morning early, is I've been doing these hearings for a lot of years, and I want to really compliment this committee, the Joint Appropriations Committee. I want to compliment the new members coming on board. You really jumped in here and made a difference. I want to compliment our staff. My goodness, what a great job as always. I was talking early this morning, Don, about how far back we go and all your good hard service to the state, but your staff as well. But more importantly, to the citizenry of Wyoming, for those that are listening, and make no mistake about it, Wyoming, we have serious structural deficit issues. It just didn't start last week. Last year, it's been going on for a while. We've got a tough road ahead, but I will end by saying I believe the cup is half full. Only in a place like Wyoming will we be able to get through this and take care of the needs of the citizens, make all the appropriate cuts. And there will be a lot of them, and they should be made. So I just wanted to thank all of you, and it's been a real pleasure to participate with you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Bebout. Co-Chairman Nicholas, do you have any comments that you'd like to open with this morning before we jump into the first agency?
Good morning, everybody. For some reason, my button wasn't working very fast. But Mr. Co-Chair, appreciate your comments. And from all of us, it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you. You're the patriarch of the 20th century for the Wyoming legislature, and we just admire your stamina, your hard work, and what you've done for the state of Wyoming. So thank you very much.
Big hand. All right, committee, with that, Dawn, I believe the first agency we have before us this morning is Agency 67, University of Wyoming. With that, Dawn, if you'll start us through.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, your first unit for consideration appears on page 19, titled Base Funding in State Aid, Unit 6701.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Summers.
this is Lloyd. Is Dawn's sound coming through funky to anybody else but me, or is it just me? Okay, thank you.
I think Dawn maybe just a little closer to the speaker might help. I don't know. All right, go ahead, Dawn. Where are we at? Page 19?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Page 19. The first unit for your consideration is state aid-based funding at the University of Wyoming, Unit 6701.
All right, committee, any amendments to this section? Unit 6701, state aid.
Mr. Chairman, is this the appropriate place for the 10 million?
Yeah, I believe this is the block grant. So do we have is there any amendments to this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we delete 10 million from the University of Wyoming block grant.
Can I get a second? Second. Discussion? Representative Walters.
Just to clarify, you want to make an additional $10 million reduction, Co-Chairman Bebout, or you are trying to reinstate 10 million of the, say, 18 million in the step 3 reduction? I guess I'm just unclear on what the motion is really trying to accomplish.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And Representative Walters, no, the motion would be to further reduce 10% out of the block grant.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Kinski.
and I would move to amend, or perhaps the sponsor would take it as a friendly amendment, that we specify that this block grant reduction shall not be made to the colleges of education, engineering, agriculture, or law. I can either do that as an amendment, or perhaps the sponsor would accept that as a friendly amendment.
I think we have a second as a friendly amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
Representative Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Bebout, I'm just trying to remind myself of the numbers. If maybe you could refresh my memory. What was the total percentage that UW reduced by? I don't think it was 10%. And what was it? And then what does your cut mean in terms of that percentage? Where does it move the needle?
So Dawn, I would ask you, do you have those percentages for UW's block grant? And
Mr. Chairman, I can look those up. I believe it's around 11%, but I can get the specific number.
And it was at step 1 and step 2, or step 2, step 3?
Correct. It is a little complicated because the major maintenance money is commingled on this unit. That's why the math is a little bit weird.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator Bebout.
Yeah, and Mr. Vice Chairman, this is not an easy amendment for me to propose. And when you look at the situation, you know, we have one university and we all understand the importance of that university. But when I reflected on the past 4 or 5 years in terms of the growth of our university budget, in terms of the block grant relative to what's going on in other parts of government, and particularly our general fund, and how we've taken $1 billion+ out of the general fund, And we were around, and my numbers may be off a little bit, but it seems to me that during the last cycle, we were in there about 460 million block grant to the university. That it just makes sense for us to share that burden along with everybody else. And it's just one of the areas I think that to be just a simple matter of fairness, we're asking state government general fund dollars $1 billion plus. We're talking about 10%, 12, 15% for the university. And, we all recall here about, maybe a year and a half ago where we did an internal audit and they came up with about $120 million of funds they found at the university, and nice surprise. Of course, some of those they had to reallocate back, but there's still a substantial amount of reserves the university has. And that number escapes me, Don, maybe you have it, but it seems to me it's around $60, $70 million that they have in reserves now, plus they have some capital construction dollars, different pots of money over there. So it just made sense to at least have this discussion. I get it if you don't want to do it, but it's a matter of fairness to take care of, when we look at our community colleges, my goodness, they are the stepchild of our state education post-secondary. So I just think it's something to have a legitimate discussion about, and would ask for your favorable support. Thank you.
Don, were you able to come up with Mr. Co-Chair while Don's still working on those numbers?
Sure, and I'd be happy to address the motion. Committee, I would stand in opposition to the motion for several different reasons. Number one, we all received the supplemental response from the UW, I believe it was yesterday, that talks about what they're doing with these budget reductions and how they're implementing them. And you can see the number one, you can see the number of personnel that they have to eliminate just to accommodate step 2. You can also see that they're stepping into their reserves to fulfill the contract obligations for NCAR. They're stepping in their reserves to complete those School of Energy Resources matching funds to the tune of close to 20. It's about $15 million on those contracts in order to maintain the research projects. If you look at, they are also taking about a $6.5 million hit as a result of the other agency cuts that use faculty and staff and graduate students at UW to perform the functions that is contracted out to them through budgetary dollars. And so if you stack all that up, not only are they taking the cuts as recommended by the governor, but they're losing another $15 to $25 million in addition to that because of the unanticipated consequences and the trickle down as we march forward. So I understand Mr. Co-Chair's position, but I would respectfully oppose the motion.
Don, any luck with those numbers yet?
1 second, and staff can jump in if they have completed that calculation already.
Okay. Well, I don't see anybody popping up.
Mr. Chairman, I have 12.1% for this unit, absent the major maintenance funding.
And Don, if you can just off the top of your head with the additional 10 million, would that put us close to the 15%? I don't have my calculator handy.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, this unit took about a $38.5 million reduction net of major maintenance, which is 12%. This amendment would move that to 48.5 or 48.6, which would be shade over 15%, 15.2.
So right at 15.2%. All right, committee.
I do have a question as to whether or not the $10 million would be sustained at 10 million or biennialized to 20.
So Co-chairman or Chairman Bebout, was that to be biennialized or was it a one-time?
Oh, Mr. Co-Chair, that was one time. You know, let's see how we do with this, but I wouldn't want to biennialize it at this time.
All right, so one time, Representative Larson.
So I'm a little bit, because I took the question from Dawn as, is it sustained at 10 million or biennialized, and then it come back as one time, meaning that it wouldn't be sustained. So could I get clarification on that? One time means that it would just be for this one year only and never forward. I heard Dawn ask the question, is it 10 million to be sustained moving forward as a $10 million reduction, or did you want it biennialized? I understood it come back that it was not to be biennialized, but and then I just heard that it was one time. So I'm still a little bit of a loss, Mr. Chairman.
So the way,
Just for further clarification, would it be for fiscal year 21 or 20 or 22? I mean, where would it land?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, we're already halfway through this fiscal year. It'd be in the next fiscal year. And it would be, I call it one time, it would not be biennialized for the following 2-year cycle.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
all right, does everybody understand the motion? This would be a $10 million reduction to the block grant for the second half of this biennium, one time, and would not be biennialized. It would have the caveat on there that out of that $10 million reduction to the block grant, that there would be no reductions to the engineering college, the ag college, the education college, or the law college. That's the motion that we have before us. Any more discussion? Co-Chairman Nicholas.
So would that include SER when you're saying the engineering college or the tier 1 engineering? Because really those are separate entities.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, know that, you know, SER is separate. It was not intended to affect that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, committee, any more questions before we vote? All right, Don?
Mr. Chairman, my percentages, the numbers are right, the 38.5, but my percentages were based on the grant payments. They did not include, you can see on the top of the employer health, you can see on the top of page 19, the employer health insurance benefits. If you take those into account, the cuts to this unit are 10%, and the cuts with the $10 million would be 12.5%. So it depends on whether you include that employer insurance. Apologies.
All right, does everybody understand that? Any other additional questions, committee? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Uh, 5-7, motion fails. All right, Don.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to get out of here, but I have another motion. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate part for the athletic department. Could I move that and explain it real quick, like?
Mr. Chairman Bebout, go ahead. I think while we're on University of Wyoming, we'll just move to the athletic department. So if you have a motion, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The motion, members of the JAC, would be that in terms of the athletic budget, that we remove $1 million additional dollars from the MRG program that Don talked about earlier this morning. And I believe that number we have in there is about 8.5. It could be 10 million, but we removed $1 million from the MRG program, and we put that in the University of Wyoming Athletic Budget Department's budget. And with the caveat that they match it on a 1-for-1 basis to help our athletic department get through this critical time we're going through right now with their intercollegiate athletic program. And I've been a strong proponent of athletics at the University of Wyoming when I was in high school at Shoshone, if you can believe that, years ago. And it's just so important to the state of Wyoming. And here's a little bit of thing, a little tool we can give to the athletic department to help them out. And the MRG seemed like a good place to get the money. They will match it, and it's a bang for your buck, 50-50. So I would ask for your support.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Mr. Chairman, is that a one-time, not biennialized reduction to the MRGs, one time to the University of Wyoming Athletic Department, effective for the second half of the biennium?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chairman, that is the intent of the motion.
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to go into a breakout before and have a discussion.
All right,
Okay.
we can do that. Karen, do you have the breakout rooms established?
I will have them momentarily.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, and Mr. Vice Chairman, I probably will not be available. So in terms of procedures of the committee, you have my proxy to vote on this.
All right, thank you, Chairman Bebout.
Don?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you are live on YouTube.
Yeah, would you call Mike Reed during our next break? Kind of talk those three issues about him and tell him we'd love to schedule him for tomorrow.
Will do.
Thank you. And Albert, when you get a chance, have a peek at that email from the Department of Ed. And let's see if we can do that on round robin, if it fits.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we haven't got to Department of Education. I think one misunderstanding, and I'll go over it, but is when we do a vacancy, we don't take the position, we just take the money. So they would still be able to, and I'll clarify that when we have that discussion. I'll make sure that's correct.
Yeah, and maybe you could just email Dickie back and explain that, and then ask for further comments.
Okay.
All right, committee, looks like we're back in.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yep, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, before we go on, so Mike Reed with the electrical safety would like to readdress the committee. So I asked Don to get in touch with him just to clarify his budget, and I asked Don to pencil it in sometime tomorrow when it works best. So he's going to communicate with Mr. Reed and find the best time for everybody. Okay.
That'll work. We can put that in the agenda probably someplace towards early in the morning before we do round robins, and we need to open that agency back up in the morning. We can do that. So
okay, thank you.
All right, committee, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? All right, with that, I'm going to ask for all those in favor, show of hands. Those opposed? I've got a 5-5 vote. Motion fails. All right, Dawn, if you'll walk us through to the next item.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Michael has his hand up, but Dawn, if you'll hold on a sec. Michael, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, did that include the proxy from Senator Bebout?
Yeah.
Actually, Michael, I appreciate that. It did not. So with the proxy from Senator Bebout, that would have been a 6-5 motion.
I think it was a 6-6 vote, Mr. Co-Chair.
All right, well, let's go back and do that again. We're going to re-vote on the motion that was on the floor. All those in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. All right, I get 6 with the proxy. Those opposed?
Representative Olson, you need to vote.
It's okay. He's busy. It's all right.
I think we're going to have to leave it open because he's on the phone.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll leave the vote open.
Jared.
Jared, you need to vote. Jared, you need to vote on the UW.
He's a yes vote in his heart.
Jared, are you an aye or a nay?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, what I didn't disclose is I'm in 2 committee meetings right now. So I'm in the select committee on blockchain technology right now.
So Jared, we redid the vote on the taking 1 million MRGs and putting those into the University of Wyoming athletics. I need to know if you were an aye or a nay on that motion.
Well, I'm a nay.
Nay. All right. So with that, it's a 6-6 tie. Motion fails. All right, Don.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 22, the UW Family Medical Residency Practice, Unit 6711.
Committee, any amendments?
Mr. Co-Chair,
Co-Chairman Nicholas.
I just have a question. When you read the written materials submitted to us, no, I take it back. That's for a different motion. I have no comment.
All right, committee, no amendments. Don?
Mr. Chairman, staff would note that Unit 6711, UW Medical Education, 6721, WWAMI, and 6722, dental contracts, the tables do not conform with the narrative. So we would ask your approval to put the reductions in the appropriate units.
Don, go ahead and do that unless there's any objections from the committee. No objections, move forward with that, Don. So committee, unit 6711, if there's no amendments, we'll go to the next unit. Don?
Page 26, WWAMI, Medical Education Instruction, Contract, Unit 6721.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, Don. Next unit.
Page 29, Dental Contracts, Unit 6722.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, Don. Next unit.
Page 33, the School of Energy Resources, Unit 6801.
Mr. Co-Chair,
Co-Chairman Nicholas.
thank you. Before we go on, so in the response that we got back from the University of Wyoming, they made, and came up before, they made a suggestion that they need to take a serious look at moving from the University of Washington to some other program. And I think the most logical, that, from what I've heard in the past, is the University of Colorado, because of the cost and whether or not transferring that program over to University of Colorado would be both economically and structurally a better fit for Wyoming. And so I'm wondering if the committee is interested in doing a footnote to ask them to perform that evaluation and report back to JAC.
I'd be interested. I think they need to take a look at it.
It's a question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Guru.
So we're talking both, or we're talking the WICHE program and WWAMI? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
It's the WWAMI program.
It's the WWAMI program, okay.
Committee,
No problem.
Co-Chairman Nicholas, was that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to draft a footnote that and Don, if you can handcraft it, and we'll review the footnote.
Second by Representative Larson. All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, motion passes. Next item, Don.
Mr. Chairman, I will pause here briefly. There was a member who, and this was a couple of weeks ago, contemplated some revisions to the WIDENT program as well. Is that still of interest to that member?
So, Mr.
No.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that they addressed the WIDENT in their report to us and how they're going to handle it. Basically, I think they're going to eliminate 2 positions out of it. So I think that was one of our discussions earlier anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That being said, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 36, Tier 1 Engineering 6901.
Any amendments, committee? No amendments, Don, continue.
Page 40, NCAR MOU, Unit 9601.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Mr. Chairman, page 43, Endowments Matching Funds, Unit 9705. And I would remind the committee, if you agree with the governor's recommendation, this would require a elimination of a footnote relative to the $6.25 million matching funds.
Committee, any amendments?
So Don, even though we're eliminating the footnote, I think they indicated that they're still funding these things And so it really doesn't make any difference. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, if we don't eliminate the footnote, the same dollars will have to compete for the
Yeah.
FPO and the pore space. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So Don, do we need to make a motion to eliminate the footnote now or when we get to the 300 series?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's incorporated in the Gov's rec if you concur with the Gov's rec. So no motion is needed.
Okay. Committee, any amendments to this section? Endowments, matching funds? No amendments? Don, continue.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that completes the University of Wyoming.
All right. So,
Next agency for your consideration is Agency 69, WICHE.
continue.
The first unit for your consideration is on page 11, Administration and Grants, Unit 2001.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, continue, Don.
Mr. Chairman, that closes out WICHE. The next agency for consideration is EORC, Enhanced Oil Recovery Commission, Agency 70. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 12, Commission and Support, Unit 101.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, continue, Don.
Page 18, Technical Outreach and Research, Unit 201.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Mr. Chairman, that is it for this agency. However, Michael, could you comment on a technical issue? I'm sorry, that we just wanted to point out that the narrative on page 17 is erroneous. You are voting on the table, so we will apply that as the table. On page 17, they note.
Michael, you have anything to add?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I believe Don has covered it. It's just a note on the narrative to make sure that it conforms with the table.
All right. Don, continue.
Mr. Chairman, that closes out EORC. If there are no further amendments, the next agency for your consideration is Agency 77, ETS, Enterprise Technology Services. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 24 and 25, IT Services, Unit 1001.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Mr. Chairman, page 29, IT Enhanced Services, Unit 3001.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 32, Wind Infrastructure, Unit 5001.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue, Don.
Mr. Chairman, that closes out Agency 77. The next agency for your consideration is Agency 80, the Department of Corrections. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 29, WHCC Commissary, Unit 103.
Committee, any questions or any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Unit 106 appears on page 32, Wyoming State Penitentiary Commissary.
Any amendments? Continue, Don.
Page 35, Wyoming Medium Security Correctional Institute or Institution Commissary, Unit 109.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 39, WWC Assistance, Unit 204.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 43, WSP Assistance, Unit 206.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 46, WMCI Assistance, Unit 209.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 50, Prisons, Unit 1001.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 54, Education, Unit 1002.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 57, Investigations Unit, Unit 1004.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 61, Offender Management, Unit 1011.
Any amendments? Continue.
Page 67, Wyoming Department of Corrections Recruitment, Unit 1018.
Any amendments? Continue.
Page 72, Training Academy, Unit 1019.
Any amendments? Continue.
Page 78, Central Services, Unit 1031.
Any amendments? Continue.
Page 83, Health Services, Unit 1033.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 87, Secure Treatment Facility, Unit 1037.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 89, Corrections Operations, Unit 1100. And Mr. Chairman, I believe there is an issue with this one. Perhaps Elizabeth can elaborate.
Elizabeth?
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It does appear that this is a footnote is required because it references, I believe it was chapter 152, the mental health and substance abuse programming in the past legislation. So if you do approve this, we would have to address that similar, pardon me, and I defer to Dawn to, I think, how we're addressing other of these issues.
Elizabeth, you broke up towards the end. Could you repeat what the action would be?
I do apologize. I think my internet might be having issues. I do believe that we will need a footnote, or if we're doing the section 300, I'm not sure which is your choice, to make sure that we reference this bill because it is a different bill. It was not part of the budget bill last year.
I would so move for a footnote.
So footnote instead of a bill. Is that your recommendation, Mr. Co-Chair?
Yes.
Do I get a second on a footnote? Second, Representative Walters. All those in favor of adding that footnote, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion passes. Dawn, you'll draft that language up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right, next item.
Page 92, Unit House Bill 53, Unit 2002, and I believe this has the same type of an issue. Again, we're amending legislation that was adopted in a separate bill to the budget bill, so we have to make some conforming modifications in the budget bill.
Same motion, Mr. Co-Chair.
Motion for an amendment, second by Representative Walters. All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item, Dawn.
Page 104, Offender Management, Unit 2011. And on this item, I would note that this reduction requires an agency fee revision, and this will be addressed in your legislation LSO 268 on the docket for tomorrow. So you can vote on this or proceed with the governor's rec if there are no changes. Just recognize that there will be a provision in the fee bill modifying the use of those fees.
All right, so there's no amendments. No amendments, continue, Dawn.
Mr. Chairman, page 108, Adult Community Corrections, Unit 2012.
All right, no amendments, continue.
Page 110, Split Sentencing, Unit 2013.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 115, Offender Management, Unit 3011.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 117, Offender Supplies, Unit 3012.
No amendments, continue.
Page 119, Facility Management, Unit 3021.
No amendments, continue.
Page 121, Facility Operations, Unit 3022.
No amendments, continue.
Page 125, Administration Honor Conservation Camp, Unit 3031.
No amendments, continue.
Page 128, Food Service, Unit 3032.
No amendments, continue.
Page 133, Programming Honor Conservation Camp, Unit 3033.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 136, Education Honor Conservation Camp, Unit 3034.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 141, Offender Management Women's Center, Unit 4011.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 143, Women's Center Offender Supplies, Unit 4012.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 145, Women's Center Facility Management, Unit 4021.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 147, Women's Center Facility Operations, 4022.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 151, Women's Center Administration, Unit 4031.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 154, Women's Center Food Service, Unit 4032.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 158, Women's Center Programming, Unit 4033.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 161, Women's Center Education, Unit 4034.
Representative Stiff.
No, I'm good. Just no questions, no comments.
I just was curious. I just wanted to make sure you were still with us. So no amendments. Continue.
Page 166, Honor Farm Offender Management, Unit 5011.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 168, Honor Farm Offender Supplies, Unit 5012.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 170, Honor Farm Facility Management, Unit 5021.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 172, Honor Farm Facility Operations, Unit 5022.
All right. No amendments. Continue.
Page 175, Honor Farm Administration, Unit 5031.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 178, Honor Farm Food Service, Unit 5032.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 181, Honor Farm Programming, Unit 5033.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 184, Honor Farm Education, Unit 5034.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 187, Honor Farm Agriculture, 5071.
Senator Steinmetz. Any amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have an amendment.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 192, State Penitentiary Offender Management, Unit 6011.
All right. No amendments. Continue.
Page 194, State Penitentiary Offender Supplies, Unit 6012.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 198, State Penitentiary Facility Management, Unit 6021.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 200, State Penitentiary Facility Operations, Unit 6022.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 204, State Penitentiary Administration, Unit 6031.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 208, State Penitentiary Food Service, Unit 6032.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 211, State Penitentiary Programming, Unit 6033.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 214, State Penitentiary Education, Unit 634.
No amendments. Continue.
Last division, Mr. Chairman. Page 219, Wyoming Medium Correctional Institution Offender Management, Unit 9011.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 221, WMCI Offender Supplies, Unit 9012.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 225, WMCI Facility Management, Unit 9021.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 227, WMCI Facility Operations, Unit 9022.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 232, WMCI Administration, Unit 9031.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 236, WMCI Food Service, Unit 9032.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 240, WMCI Programming, Unit 9033.
No amendments. Continue.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, page 242, WMCI Education, Unit 9034.
No amendments. We made it across the finish line. All right. Next agency, Dawn.
One moment, Mr. Chairman. The next agency for your consideration is the Board of Parole, Agency 81. The first unit for your consideration, and the only unit, appears on page 15, Administration, Unit 101.
Any committee, any amendments? No amendments. Next agency, Dawn.
Next agency for your consideration is Agency 85, the Wyoming Business Council. First unit for your consideration, page 19.
Committee, any amendments? Seeing no amendments, Don?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Representative
Mr. Chairman.
Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, this goes to the Wyoming Women's Council. And so, Mr. Chairman, and maybe Don can help me out, but basically I would like to
Albert, we're having a hard time. Albert, you're gonna have to speak in the microphone. We're losing you.
Yeah, my internet, I don't know what's going on today, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So basically, Mr. Chairman, what my motion is to move the Wyoming, the Women's Council and that general fund money from the Business Council to Workforce Services Agency 053. And then in order to effectuate a balanced budget, I would like to reduce. I gotta move over to my other screen. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to reduce the 222 object code by 55,910. And if that doesn't work, I'll just do the 200 series in general out of that unit. So Don, does that get to what I want to do?
Mr. Chairman, for me, he was breaking up a fair bit, so I did not catch all of the amendment. Did other members?
I think he said, Don, that he wanted to reduce the 222 by 55,000 and some change. Are we on unit 20? Which unit or what number are we on?
We're on unit 101, so I would be reducing the 200 series, in particular 222, by that amount of the shift, by a like amount of the shifts, to be general fund neutral. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So those funds would move over to the Department of Workforce Services earmarked for the Wyoming Women's Council. Is that correct, Representative Summer?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Don, does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, it does. And the number I have is 55,910. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Senator Kinski.
So just to make sure I'm understanding, the Women's Council is not a separate line item. It's just a program. And evidently the program costs $55,000. So you're just taking $55,000 out of travel and moving that over to workforce services. So the net effect on the budget overall is zero. Is that correct?
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Can I get a second for Representative Summers?
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Larson.
I just had some questions. Wondering if we could do a breakout here for just a couple minutes.
Yes, we can. So let's do a breakout.
Hey, Don, was there a Senate breakout that I'm missing?
Don, you were muted.
Thank you. Yes, Senator, there is. Karen, would you please make sure that Senator Perkins has an invitation? When that invitation pops on your screen, you can click on it and it takes you to a breakout room with just your Senate colleagues.
Karen, it appears that we have Miss Representative Summers again. If you want to send him an invite, if he would like to rejoin the breakout room, I am unsure.
He should have that already on his screen.
Thank you.
think we have everybody, Karen.
Representative Larson, I believe that the Senate is still meeting on their side, or at least portions of their membership.
Well, there you have it.
Every time we do this, it shuffles all the positions around on the screen. So it's distracts you because you kind of get used to knowing where people are at, and then all of a sudden you got to start searching the whole screen to find out.
Keeps us on our toes, Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Co-Chair and Mr. Vice Chairman, if at any point you'd like me to pull them back into the main room, I can do that if you'd like.
All right. Okay, committee, let's continue. We are back on Wyoming Business Council, Unit 101. Is there any additional amendments on this unit? No amendments, Don. What's the next unit?
Mr. Chairman, the next unit appears on page 24.
Don, I see Elizabeth has got her hand up.
I do apologize. Mr. Chairman, did you finish action on that last motion for the change between the Business Council and DWS?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
With that, Mr. Chairman, the next unit appears on page 24, Economic Diversification, Unit 201.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments. Continue, Don.
Page 27, Business Ready Communities, Unit 1610.
Committee and amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we take an additional reduction of 1.25 million to take effect in the second year of this biennium, and that would biennialize into 2.5 million moving forward.
Second.
Second by Representative Summers. Discussion?
No discussion. We just think that that's an appropriate additional cut that could come back into the general fund for other uses.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Yeah, it's funny, last year I was actually proposed one of those cuts myself, and actually the good co-chair talked me into cutting it back a little bit and saying, hey, give them a chance. They got a new director and they're moving in a new direction. And so I did. And actually I've gotten a chance to work with them and see what they're doing. And I think that they really are on the right track. And with COVID-19, they got thrown into a deal where they had to kind of switch gears and turn into a distribution point for CARES Act dollars, of which they did an exemplary job. And now they're just now starting to refocus on these things. And I don't think it's the time to cut this. We're cutting, and we've been cutting a lot the last couple of days. It's been very difficult for all of us, but this is an investment in our future. And I think that they should be given an opportunity to see what they can do. We know that the idea that we're going to raise a lot of taxes and do a lot of things are probably not going to happen. So that we're going to have to rely on things like this to help generate capital for us to continue forward. So on and against the motion. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kinski.
I think it's tragic that we can't actually double down on economic development and diversification. All our core industries are on the ropes. If there were ever a time to really put the blocks to economic development and make sure it happens, it's a reality. It's now. They've got a board that gets it. They spend a lot of time in strategic retreats. I've talked to folks like Megan Getz, the former board chair. These are some dynamic, visionary people. They brought on a new director, Josh Dorrell. He was in the midst of implementing a strategy where they got the message loud and clear. This is not a grant making for local sewer projects. This is a program that should go out and be really generating some new jobs, new opportunities for Wyoming. They're focused on that. And no sooner did Josh get the orientation as to where his chair and his desk were when COVID hit, they immediately pivoted, distributed this money. I think they've done a fantastic job, and I just they're already taking their cuts, and I think it would be wrong to cut them anymore. On and against the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson, and then Representative Larson, real quick, could you give us a page and then what the code number where you want to remove those monies?
So, Mr. Chairman, we're on page 27 and in its unit 1610. Business ready communities, and you'll see that they're in the grants and payments they have an existing budget of 29,300,000. The governor makes a step 2 reduction of 2.4. We would make an additional amount to start taking effect in the second year of 1.25. That moving forward would biennialize into 2.5. So, Mr. Chairman, I would just push back a little bit with fur-lined gloves to say I think that the Business Council's done an absolutely incredible job on the COVID distribution and coming up with the plans and implementing them in a much more efficient manner than we ever seen from the feds on any of their programs. I just have been very, very impressed. I think that they do get this. I just think that for right now, we have a significant amount of money in this program. If they get it expended for projects, and we think that those projects are great and they develop, they'll have another $25 million to expand over this biennium. And if we like it, they can come back and request in their standard budget to increase it. But for right now, I think that it's just an additional appropriate reduction in those funds that they can do without.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My question's for Dawn. I'm sure I know the answer to this, but I don't believe this agency took any step 3 reductions. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Summers, that is correct.
Thank you.
And Mr. Co-Chair, that was my comment. That was my commentary that they didn't take any step 3 reductions. If you can think about what we've cut out of the Department of Health and other on the ground impacts to the folks of Wyoming, I think this is appropriate. I've also had discussion with the chairman of the Minerals Committee, and he's concurred that this would be appropriate at this point in time.
Committee, any more discussion? I want to do a breakout session with our members. Karen, can you set that up? Evan, how much snow did you guys get out of this last snowstorm over there?
Over in Star Valley, we have about a foot.
Oh, really?
It was enough I had to plow snow last night.
Oh. You could have shared some of it.
We want to share. Come in about 2 months from now, I'll share all you want with you.
Yeah, we'll take it if we can put it up high and then run it into those reservoirs. Because I'm afraid we're not going to fill very many reservoirs this year.
Really, your water packed down that far?
Oh, we're the driest place in the state of Wyoming. We've been running about 60% of normal snowpack and precip. We had nothing in, I mean, our October, November, December was just super warm. It was great, nice weather, but zero precip. We've got maybe 2 or 3 inches, but we're running about 60% of normal snowpack right now. So,
Wyatt, how long are you gonna have to step off for?
What's that, Dave?
Wyatt's got to step off in about 10 minutes. How long?
That depends on how long the guy wants to look at cattle and how long he wants to talk.
Oh, okay. Well, so you'll be gone for the morning.
I'll put it this way, Mr. Vice Chairman and Dave. I'll make it as fast as I can.
Yeah. Well, business comes first. You got a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah. Get a good price.
2 guys, 2 ranchers talking about cows. There's never a quick conversation.
Yeah.
It just does not exist.
Larry, especially when I'm trying to squeeze just a few more cents out of the calf.
Yeah. So are you selling or buying, Wyatt?
Selling.
Oh.
So you're the guy that's got to do all the talking.
Yes, sir.
What a fine pen of animals.
This is a mighty fine pen of animals.
All right, we're going to reconvene. There's the motion on the table. Could we have that restated? I think it was Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'd be happy to. So, Mr. Chairman, we're on page 27, Business Ready Communities, Division 1600, Unit 1610. I would further reduce in the second year of this biennium their budget by 1.25 million. That would carry forward into their standard budget as a biennialized amount of 2.5 million.
All right, committee, any more discussion or questions? No questions. I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion passes 7-4 vote on that one. All right, Don, if you'll continue.
Mr. Chairman, that completes, if there are no other amendments, that completes the Wyoming Business Council. The next agency for your consideration is Agency 90, the Wyoming Energy Authority. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 12, Wyoming Pipeline Authority, Unit 901.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments. Don, continue.
Page 16, Wyoming Infrastructure Authority, Unit 3201.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments. Next agency, Don.
Mr. Chairman, the next agency is Agency 96, the State Budget Department. The first and only unit for your consideration appears on page 9, Administration, Unit 2501. I would bring to the attention of the committee that this governor's recommendation results in a reduction of their printing supplies on line 231, again on page 9, in the amount of $9,534. That is for the printed copies of your budget and supplemental budget. If you do proceed with the governor's recommendation on this, You will need a bill draft, which changes statute regarding the printing of budgets. That bill draft has not yet been requested.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Co-Chair,
yeah, I would move that we deny Gov's rec.
Second.
second. Second. Don,
Mr.
go ahead, Don.
I'll wait, Mr. Chairman.
What's that, Representative Summers?
Oh, just a question, Mr. Chairman, and just a question to Chairman Nicholas. You know, we could, if you wanted to be revenue neutral, we could take that $9,000 out of their 900 series. If you want to be revenue neutral.
I would consider that a friendly amendment.
All right, so will you restate the amendment? Co-Chairman Nicholas?
Yeah, that we deny Gov's rec, but also remove the funds from section 900 to make it revenue neutral.
Don, do you have that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm interpreting that as a denial of the Gov's rec just on the printing supplies, $9,534, and moving that reduction to the 900 series contract services.
That's correct.
Okay, committee, any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. So Don, I'm assuming that doesn't require a bill draft then.
Mr. Chairman, that does not.
All right, committee, any more amendments for this section? No amendments. Don, next agency.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Kevin.
In all transparency, if you go to page 5, we recommended that a reduction in a prior biennium budget for a current encumbrance of $41,940. That would be associated with the wrap up of the Chapter 17 report and the B11 electronic B11 system. That $41,000 would put us on an apples to apples basis. It would remove the B11 amount of money so we could compare standards. And we'd also add the object code funding by federal, state, and general. That's what the mission would be for that $41,940. However, this is not in the profile, meaning that if you accepted that reduction, then LSO would add a $41,940 to the profile, but it would limit our ability to facilitate the implementation of the Chapter 17 report improvements.
So Kevin, is that a pretty please?
It's just clarity that you didn't act upon it. I'd like to get the Chapter 17 done and implemented, but I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't glossed over because it was not brought to your attention.
Okay, appreciate it.
So Don, do we need to take an affirmative action on that then?
Mr. Chairman, I'll admit, I don't quite understand. I understood those were going to be reverted funds. Is that not?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Mr. Chairman, they have not been reverted. If you want us to revert them, then we would revert them. They would go into the reversion process and be available for LSO on their January profile, but we have not. And we would be able to implement. If we don't, we'll implement the Chapter 17 report improvements as we discussed. If your decision is to take those funds, then it puts us ties our hands on the ability to get the Chapter 17 improvements accomplished.
So Mr. Co-Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chair.
I would move that the monies not revert.
Do I have a second? Second by Summers. Discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Kinski.
I want to keep things moving along, but I do want to understand what we're talking about. What's Chapter 17 improvements that he's talking about?
Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, each biennium, we provide you a report on the standard budget and all the changes that are being made to the standard budget. most of those are driven by rate increases like EGI, et cetera. But we also give you a breakout of what the prior biennium budget was and what the expenditures are. But in that way it's done now, the prior biennium budget includes the B11s. We want to get that out of there and just report it the standard. And then we want to do is report the expenditures as here's the expenditures associated with the standard. So you know, and then just say, okay, here's the variance. So maybe they didn't spend $10. And then we'll say of that $10, how much is general, how much is federal, how much is special. That puts it clearly in the hands of the legislature to understand what they can do in the Chapter 17 report actually becomes something actionable for the department, the budget department, the governor, the citizens, and the legislature. That's our vision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any more questions for Kevin? Any more questions on this section? State Budget Department? No more questions? Dawn, next agency?
Chairman, your next agency is Agency 98, the Office of Guardian Ad Litem. The first unit for your consideration appears on page 16, the Guardian Ad Litem Unit 101. Mr. Chairman, I believe there were a couple of proposed amendments brought forward to LSO on this.
All right, committee, any proposed amendments? No amendments? Senator Kinski, did we have one there?
Yeah, we did. Mr. Chairman, let me take a look here real quick. I'm working my screen. It would be to reduce the 900 series by $414,783, which according to the note I have from Michael, it's the same level as the step 2 reduction, i.e. not follow the governor's 50% FY 2021 give back.
Can I get a second? Second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I guess the question is, we've gone through these budget cuts and made adjustments. Is there some other place that you would take the reduction to where we could maintain reductions in this agency or in the budget at all? Is there a counter for the action you're taking?
So Representative Larson, the action is actually to reduce it more, not put any money back. So it would actually, as I understand the motion was to get rid of an additional $414,783, not added in. So it would be an additional step 3 reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear.
Thanks for the clarification.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And so Senator Kinski, I'm interested in why we're further reducing from this agency, and it seems like it has a good mission, and it's taken its cuts. I think it took a percentage cut like everybody else. So what are we accomplishing here?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
If I may, the agency does good work as does every agency we've cut. I have it, this is not an area in which I practice, but I have it from my colleagues in that field that this budget is a bit heavy for the amount of work that is to be done, that the reimbursement is generous for the level of expertise and skill required. And the feeling was very strong from somebody who I greatly respect their expertise in this area that there can and should be an additional cut here.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question and a comment. The question, so will this then biennialize?
Let's see. Michael, can you help me out here?
Mr.
Mike,
Chair,
go ahead.
my understanding of the intent of this amendment is to treat it basically like a step 3 reduction without the governor's big give back. So the 414 would be a biannualized number. It would not increase to 800,000. It would just be 414 out of that next biennium.
Thank you, Michael.
Representative Schwartz, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, my comment is we just spun off GAL from Public Defender's Office. This is their first year operating as an independent agency. And I think the work they do is actually critical, and I'm not willing to make this cut at this time.
Any other comments, committee? Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm still trying to track what the proposal is here. It's currently in step 2 reductions, they reduce 414,000. So I think what the senator is asking to do is an additional 414,000. So that would make it 800. But then does that 800 biennialize, or does only 400 biennialize? The way he has presented it, I haven't been able to track it because there is no step 3 reduction. And so there is no governor give back in this position, in this series. And so that when he said governor give back, it really threw me for a loop. So if the senator could please help me to understand what he's trying to do and total repercussions of the action, I would appreciate it.
Well, Representative Walters, I think the way that Michael had portrayed it, it would be a one-time through the second half of this biennium. The only thing that biennializes after that is the 414 step 2 reduction. Is that your motion, Senator Kinski?
Don, you want to help us out here? It looks like you might have an idea.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this biennium would be cut by $828,000, the combination of the 414 plus the 414, and that 828 would be sustained in the next biennium. It wouldn't double, or part of it wouldn't double. It would just continue on at 828 reduction.
Correct.
And then Don, so that turns it into basically a 20% reduction, right?
Mr. Chairman, I get it at 26%.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Representative Schwartz. The reduction to that line is 26.5%. The reduction for the entire agency on this line would be 15%.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Summers.
So, Mr. Chairman, this was a new agency. We have never seen whether they have reversions or not, correct, Don?
Mr. Chairman, yes, this was adopted in the 2020 session, so we have no history on this.
Mr. Chairman?
Kevin?
We could research for you in the old budget in the public defender how much was being reverted by that separate division, if you'd like us to. Get your history.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to understand that, even if whether we pass or deny, moving forward, to have that information.
Yeah, just clarification. This is a new agency, but it's an old program.
Right.
Well, it was in the Attorney General's office, and as I understand it, the real concern here, and we had this discussion with the director when they're here, that under their 900 series they contract out. And those contracts are deemed to be very lucrative for the services provided, relative to even, and I think the testimony was as to what the agency supplies with their internal staff, and that's the one concern that I've heard articulated from people that practice in this field, that they feel like these are very lucrative contracts to do this. So anyway, Representative Olson. Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to provide a little more information on that. I think what the Guardian ad litem world is actually very interesting in terms of dollar figures. A private guardian ad litem, it's not, it's not set, but the industry standard for a private guardian ad litem is actually, at least in my county, is always a lowered hourly rate. So in all guardian ad litem cases, if you hire a private guardian, they never charge not in my county, never charge their hourly rate. They're usually two types of lawyers. They're usually ones that have been practicing in family law for a very long time, a couple decades. They're winding down and they enjoy the work with children. And so they represent children. And so they actually reduce their hourly rate. It's so common in my county that you couldn't raise your hourly rate because it's basically a flat rate. Everyone knows what it is when they get a guardian. Now, the private guardian ad litem, I would push back a little on that being lucrative, because those contracts are coming out on the other end of the spectrum. So they are not the more senior lawyers; they're new lawyers, and they're taking small hourly rate contracts through that guardian's office. They're not, it's a much reduced rate than it would be even from that reduced private rate. So just a little more information there. I don't think that it's a handout into the legal community. It's quite the opposite. And just in terms of the cut in general, it is true that the program existed before, but seeing what it does as an agency dollar wise is different when it's stood out on its own with its own director, and how it manages itself, whether it grows or stays stable or costs us general fund dollars. That is yet to be determined, but I think a cut is premature at this stage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Olson, I have a question, because you're obviously fairly knowledgeable in this, but my understanding is much of the when you hire a contract attorney, much of the work that the guardian ad litem do under their contract is not legal work. It more falls into the nature of social, what would normally be done by some of the social services. And so the pay equivalent to, a state or a county person involved in that is probably around $14 an hour, where even though it may be reduced from the attorney rate, it's still substantially higher than it would be for a social worker.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. I don't know that I would say that's not exclusive to this area of law. It's very common in areas of family law, bankruptcy, criminal law. It's very common for a lawyer to fill two roles, as a legal role and as the counseling role. It's just not uncommon anymore in our profession. It's a lot of what we do. In the family law realm, I will tell you, because that's probably about 60% of the volume of my law firm. And I've got 4 lawyers that do that all day, every day. And I got support staff that do it all day, every day. And far more than probably 70% of what they do is conflict management and resolution, little less than document drafting and in-court representation. It's, hey, I didn't get my visitation. And a lot of that is walking that person back off the ledge, calming them down, and helping them understand options to move forward to better navigate their life. Bankruptcy law, Representative Stiff could speak to that. It's the same thing. You don't just bring someone through the system. You counsel them as you go through on life and debt management and credit management. So that is not unusual for the profession. And actually, you'd probably pay more, Senator Hicks, because you'd end up paying for a lawyer and a counselor on top of that. That's why most of these guardians are senior lawyers. They have a lot of experience in life, and they're able to offer a lot of counseling to families and to children. And they do it all at a reduced rate, as opposed to hiring, multiple professionals, and counselors do sometimes get involved, but the object is to keep those expenses low for individuals.
All right, committee, it seems to me like this might be a subject that the management audit committee ought to take a look at, is to see if a lot of these, if we're paying for services that could be done at a much lower cost, that we may want to look at that. But with that, if there's no more questions, I'm
Well,
going to go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Senator Kinsky.
I do want to weigh in. This is old wine in a new skin, but it's still old wine. And somebody referred to this work as critical. It is critical. I agree. I don't bring this lightly, nor any of the cuts that any of us have undertaken or that the governor's recommended. Those are the times in which we live. I have it on good authority that this line is fat. And my understanding of what a GAL does is you've got a husband fighting and a wife fighting, and it's more than the usual divorce. There's some concern about the best interest of the child that a judge may not be able to resolve. So you have somebody assess the homes of both and make a recommendation, stand up for that child. But it must be different in Laramie County, because it sounds like they do counseling and social work and a host of other responsibilities, which may be what's led my colleagues to say, this could be performed by others at a lower cost. And that's the reason for bringing the motion. We'll be back here for another budget session soon. This is a new agency. If they can't withstand this, they'll be in telling us, but I feel we can safely make this cut without impairing the mission of the agency. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Stith, you had a comment?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the guardian ad litem lawyers, what they're doing is representing the children in criminal neglect cases.
Yeah.
They're not representing children in divorce.
Okay.
All right, committee, any more questions or discussions? No more discussion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion fails on a 7-4 vote. Next agency for our consideration, Dawn.
Dawn, you are muted.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. The next agency for your consideration is the judicial branch. But if you want to continue and finish out the executive branch and then move to the judiciary, that's fine too.
Let's go to district attorneys 151, and we'll do the judicial branch after we get through all of the others.
Mr. Chairman, agency 151, the district attorney for judicial district number 1. Yeah, it has one unit for your consideration on pages 17 and 18, administration unit 101.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments. Continue.
Mr. Chairman, the next agency for your consideration is agency 157, the district attorney for judicial district number 7. The unit of consideration appears on page 17, administration unit 101.
Any amendments? No amendments. Continue.
Mr. Chairman, the next agency for your consideration is agency 160, the Board of Prosecuting Attorneys. The unit consideration appears on page 9, administration unit 101.
Any committee, any amendments? No amendments. Next agency.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the next agency is 205, education school finance. The first and only unit for your consideration appears on page 13, WISE implementation unit 4702.
Mr. Chairman.
Committee, Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, my amendment kind of crosses over between 205 and 206, but I'll kind of give you, I can do the 205 first, and then I can do the 206. But Mr. Chairman, basically my suggestion is to deny the Gov's rec. And Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do in 205 is basically cut 15% to kind of reflect other cuts from divisions 4,500, 4,600, 4,700, which would come out to a reduction of 2,776,461 in S5. And then Don, what I don't know, is that a biennial number or was that a 1-year number?
Mr. Chairman, our understanding would be that amount would be sustained going forward. It would not double, but certainly you can change that.
No, Mr. Chairman, that would be how I would craft it. And then, Mr. Chairman, when we get into 206, remember they were doing a school foundation swap for general fund. And then what I would do in 205 is basically stop that swap, and I would cut other general fund dollars to compensate for, to make it general fund neutral, Mr. Chairman. So right now, though, in 205, what I'm doing is denying Gov's rec. And by the way, that reduction is in one of these divisions. And so I'm going to give them they'll have kind of the ability to figure out where in these divisions to cut that.
Second.
Second. Discussion. So Representative Summers, denying the governor's rec, you would basically, it's the step 3, $884,183. We would deny that, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
And are those general funds or S5?
Mr. Chairman, those are S5, and that's how they wanted to pay for the general fund positions in 206. So I am going to cut more than that out of 205, and then I will deal with 206 in other motions.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Kinski.
so I'm on page 11. I see Division 4700. And where do I find Division 4500 and 4600? I think those are the others you named.
I think we're on page 3, are we not?
Mr. Chairman, I thought we were on page 13, actually.
Yeah, I
in
was
the
on
budget, in our budget book.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, you can see that this is in Division 4700. Those other two divisions are not in the proposed supplemental budget. I want to bring those divisions in and make 15% cuts, so they're cutting like everybody else is cut. And so I'm kind of doing it a bit different.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, just bear with me because I was on 13.2, which is where Unit 4700 is opened up. Now I'm on page 3, which is the top line sheet. Okay, so Foundation Specials has 4.3 million. That's for Unit 4500. Unit 4600 has 7.7 million. Unit 4700 has 6.3 million. 15% across all three comes to 2.7 million. And so then, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask Representative Summers, I'm flipping back and forth here. What was the governor's rec that we're denying? Let me find that. What did the governor
Mr.
want
Chairman,
to do?
that would be on page 13. And that was the 884,000.
Swap.
Right. It's denied. Basically he's moving this money to 206. And so I'm just making a cut out of these three divisions in a 15% amount and denying that Gov's rec.
Okay.
Committee, any more questions? No more questions. Actually, I'd like to divide the motion. And so what I'd like to do is break it into two. First would be to Division 1 would be to either deny or accept the governor's recommendation, and Division 2 would implement the 15% reductions to the 45 and 4600 series of 15% to whatever number that is.
So, Mr. Chairman, you're the chairman, but I'm not sure that's quite divisible. My reduction is 15% to all three divisions, which includes the one that the 884 comes out of. So I think if you just further amend whatever you want to do, for example, if you want to take all 884 out of one division and take the rest, take 15% cuts out of the other two, there's lots of options you could do, Mr. Chairman.
So what's 15% of the 4,700 budget, the 63, the 6.38? So is that 884 15%? I just want to make sure if we're reducing more or less out of that.
Mr. Chairman, I think the 884 is more than that, but maybe Don has that.
Don?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it is less. 15% of the 6.38 is 957 million, or 957,000, excuse me. So it's slightly more than the 884.
So, Mr. Chairman, the question seems divisible to me, but could we have a caucus?
Breakout, Karen.
Good to see you back.
Yep, good to be back. Where's your checkbooks?
I run downstairs for a minute. I'll be right back as long as the house hasn't come back yet.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Summers,
Mr. Chairman, do you have your crew back?
not all of them. We're a little
Okay, when you
thin.
do, I will, Mr. Chairman, when everybody gets back, I'm going to explain this again and then explain some options you would have, just to clarify everything.
I think I was missing one component of your motion, so as soon as we get, I need one more senator. I think we'll go ahead and start. There we go. So there was a motion on the, and then there was a an amendment to that motion. That amendment was mine. I am going to withdraw that amendment to divide, or that motion to divide that amendment. And so what's on the floor now is the original motion made by Representative Summers. If there's no more discussion on that,
Question.
I'd call for the question. So if no more discussion, all those in favor of Representative Summers' motions, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Don, is there any more amendments on that or not division?
Mr.
No
Chairman,
more?
we don't have any more that have been provided to us.
All right, then the next section.
Mr. Chairman, that closes out the agency 205, School Foundation. If we could insert here, I think we may have, I at least want to notice if there's desire in the future. There were 3 amendments in the county prosecuting attorneys and district attorneys that we skipped over regarding the governor's recommendation or local state splits or criminal investigators. I'll just mention those broadly. We failed to raise those 3 potential amendments. They were all made early on, so I'm not sure if there's still interest in them.
Committee, if there is anybody that would like to reopen that committee, we can do that. But given the where we're at, I just assume move on with Agency 206 at this point in time to have some continuity. So we can bring those back if any of the committee members want to. So with that, Don, let's move into Agency 206, Department of Education.
Mr. Chairman, the first unit for your consideration appears on page 19, State Board of Education, Unit 1001. I believe there is an amendment.
Committee, any amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me, which page are we on, Don?
19.
So Mr. Chairman and Don, I'm probably going to need your help. So this would be my S5 cut in this agency 206. So Mr. Chairman and Don, help me through this. But I think if we go back up to the agencies on page 4, we can see, I don't know if we can see it here, but both divisions 1,000, 1,200, and 1,300 all have S5 in them. Is that correct, Don?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
And my intent with divisions 1,000, 1,200, and 1,300 is to cut 15% from their S5 dollars. And I believe their S5 dollars is about something around about 6.2 million. So I'd be cutting $931,320 S5 from divisions 1,000, 1,200, and 1,300. But at the same time, I would like to protect the State Board of Education with no more than 10% of those of S5 cuts from Division 1,000, and that they can't reduce that employee in the State Board of Education. So I'm involving 3 divisions in an S5 cut, trying to protect the State Board at a lower cut because they took a pretty good cut, and then trying to protect that position. Is that correct, Don, in how I said that?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that is correct. So it's 15% S5 reduction on Division 1,000, 1,200, and 1,300, with a footnote on Unit, I believe it's 1,001, such that the reductions not be taken in the personnel item on the State Board.
And Mr. Chairman, I think I had in there not any more than a 10% cut out of 1,001 in school foundation dollars.
Second from Representative Walters. Representative Kenner, discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Albert, when you were going over the numbers that right at the beginning, you kind of faded out on me. And I think you said $931,000. Could you go over that number, please?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, 15% of the S5 in those 3 divisions is 931,322 S5. That would buy any allowance to that amount. Isn't that correct, Don? That was my intent.
Mr. Chairman, I think it will be sustained at that amount, sustained at that 15%, not doubled.
So question, Representative Summers, is this in lieu of the step 2 and step 3 reductions? Or is this on top of the step 2 and step 3 reductions for code 100, 1,200, and 1,300 series within the department? So is this additive above and beyond?
Mr. Chairman, and Don can correct me if I'm inaccurate. It's my understanding that the agency 206 took no cuts out of S5 during their step 2 and step 3. They, in fact, in step 2, they add in S5 from their swap with 205. And in their step 3, they actually come in and just request more S5 for that one position. So they made no cuts in S5 in this agency as they made the step 2, step 3. Is that accurate, Don?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. Relative to the school foundation program, which the nomenclature is, that's Fund S5. I do believe that going forward, you have potentially 2 additional amendments regarding those swaps, but this amendment is separate and apart on top of the governor's step 2 and step 3 reductions on the general funds.
And Mr. Chairman, my intent is just to equalize the cuts. If we have deficits in both sides of our books, general fund and school foundation, then we have to do the hard thing and make cuts in both areas. And so my idea is to do this 15% cut in school foundation dollars out of those 3 divisions that hold school foundation dollars.
So question, Don, do the step 2 and step 3 reductions that the governor has in here, are those general fund or are those S5 dollars?
Mr. Chairman, they are general fund.
So Representative Summers, so are you suggesting that because those step 2 and step 3 for 1,1213 are general fund reductions? So this would be additive, but only to that portion of the S5 that goes into those 3 agency codes. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
All right, now that that's overly simplistic, does everybody understand what the motion is?
Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to work through this and I'm looking at the Division 1200, which is the bulk of it. It's about 5 million of the 6.2. And my question is, this 1200 is 2/3 of its federal funding. And I just want to be sure we're not creating any maintenance of efforts or issues with the federal funding.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers, then we'll go to you, Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the answer to that. I think primarily we use this for, that in that particular division, which is, I think your accountability and standards and assessment. I think it's mostly for our assessment process. It's just that, are we going to be able to trim some dollars out of these units on the S5 side? And I think we have to.
All right, Senator Kinski.
Well, I'm with Representative Schwartz. I'm trying to follow along. These are units that we didn't look at. We haven't opened up. I'm on page 4. I can see the aggregate of general fund, federal funds, other funds, Z, which I assume has some S5 buried in there. I just don't have enough detail. I mean, anytime you say trim spending in these days, as hard as it is, I'm with you. I just want to, I'm very leery of what I don't know. I don't have the detail on these 3 units to know what 15% from S5 is going to do.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, all I'm saying is we've asked people to make hard cuts in all agencies on the general fund side. We have an equal deficit or more of a deficit on the school foundation side. We have to find ways to trim all budgets, school foundation wise. And, if you don't like my 15, go down to 10. But I think we need to trim some.
So I'm inclined to think that we ought to support this. We're going to get another bite at this apple. We'll have a chance to have the superintendent of public instruction come back and provide information on the impact of these cuts. But initially, I think I'm inclined to go ahead and support them. And we'll have time if there's something drastic that happens associated with this to correct that. So with that, committee, any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kinski.
So I hear what you're saying, and it is a leap of faith. And so I guess with that caveat, and it is a caveat, it's a big one, that the superintendent will have a chance to come back and talk us back from the ledge. And as Representative Summers says, we do have a deficit. It's not the general fund deficit we basically fixed, but the deficit really is on the school foundation program. The general fund's in balance by the time we get done with our work here and the governor with his work. But, 2 biennia out, we're looking at almost $700 million hole in K-12 funding. So it's just, I want to make sure that whatever we're doing doesn't end up hurting the classroom. So I'll reluctantly go along with this, subject to hearing what the superintendent has to say, Mr. Chairman.
All right, committee, any more discussion on the motion? All of those in favor? Oh, is there discussion? Did I miss something? Mr. Co-Chair.
No, I was calling for the question.
Yeah.
Question's been called. All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item on the agency, Dawn.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit appears on page 23. Unit name is Finance, Unit 1101. And once again, I do believe there is an amendment.
All right. Committee, any amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is where that swap occurs. And so, Mr. Chairman, in agency 205, we denied the gov's rec, but we went ahead and actually cut more. So I'm going to give you the general philosophy of my movement here. I don't think these positions should go to school foundation. And so what I am doing is eliminating bringing that school foundation in for these positions. And my alternative would be to cut 3 vacant positions to make sure that my general fund side is balanced. And I also would use some I'd also cut, I think, 50,000 out of the 900 series in 1105. I'm just trying to balance those cuts. And then I would eliminate a 200 series unit as well to balance the cut. So, Mr. Chairman, the philosophy basically is I don't agree with making these S5 positions right now when we have when we have this hole in education. I think I've made the cuts to compensate that, keep the general fund equal. If we want to retain these positions in general fund the way they are, I think that's basically the motion. I will make my motion all encompassing, but that's the philosophy. And then, Dawn, just a question, and this was, I sent this to Executive Director Shaner. I don't know what his title is, but anyway, to Dickey. And he was concerned about the elimination of these vacancies, and he proposed 2 other positions in their stead on the general fund side. They don't add up to the same amount of money. But I want to clarify with Dawn. Dawn, we don't eliminate the position, we eliminate the money. And so if they have a critical position, they can come back in the 100 series, wherever they find the money, and stand up that position. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Don.
That is accurate. The legislature removes funding from the 100 series and the number of positions, but you do not redline specific positions.
And so, Mr. Chairman, when I sent this to Dickey, then Dickey got back to Co-Chairman Nicholas with his concerns on this part of the swap. And the fact that he didn't want to see those 3 vacancies cut. He offered up, Mr. Chairman, basically what he offered up, if I get this right, Mr. Chairman, I gotta find my, I believe he offered up a support specialist 2 0103 for $69,776. And then he didn't give an exact number, but cut 1 position for $93,744, as opposed to mine, that my reduction, I believe, of those 3, 1 includes a $110,592 that he wanted to keep, which was an 0069 and an 0086. So I assume he must have been good with the other vacancy elimination. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'll do, and Dawn, if you will do the swap of those positions. So basically I would swap out my 0069 for his 0103. And I would swap out the 0086 for a $93,744 reduction in the 100 series of 206, if that would make sense. I think there's a question by Chairman Nicholas.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chair.
I was seconding the motion.
And so, Mr. Chairman, my full motion, and I'll go through it. My full motion is to deny the governor's rec swap the $884,183 of S5 to general fund. I would sweep the 3 vacancies, which were the 0069, the 086, and a 0105. I replaced that 0069 and 0086 with the direction I gave Dawn. And then in unit 1102, I would eliminate this 200 series unit and the unobligated general fund, which is 124,915 general fund. And in unit 1105, I would cut 50,000 general fund from the 900 series. I believe there's maybe only 25,000 in that of general fund. And so, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to be light on the general fund side of that swap.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair, I understand your enthusiasm for the concept, but would you like to second the motion? Second. All right, discussion members. Representative Schwartz.
Yeah, it's not discussion, it's a question, Mr. Chairman. Could you go back to the 200 series on 1102?
Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Scott had her hand up, so probably I've goofed something up or she's got clarification.
Polly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am tracking on the vacancy report, and I do not find that specific number that Representative Summers referenced of the 93,744. So I'm not clear on exactly which position you're referencing. The other two I am clear on. So it might not be necessary to specify that exact number. I would defer to Dawn on that.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify that, when Dickie got this, he came back and he said he didn't want to see vacant position 0069 and 0086. He didn't want to see those eliminated. So I'm taking those vacancies off the board. He said instead, put in 0103, which is a 69,776 position. So really, I'm just talking dollars from the 100 series. And then he said on the 93,744, he said, we will execute on the exact position after the budget bill passes. This is general fund funding. I don't know where he gets the 93,744. So I just said out of the 100 series.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you. That works.
Senator Bebout.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I just got in late. If Albert could just, without all those numbers and everything, that gets confusing to me. Are we making some swaps from general fund to school foundation? Is that the genesis of this?
Mr. Chairman, just in general, what what Agency 206 did to make their general fund reductions is they moved $884,000 of school foundation from 205 into 206 to fund some positions that then they could reduce the general fund by. And so in 205, we made more reductions than the 884. What I'm trying to do here is leave these positions as they were generally funded. And then I am trying to find other cuts within the agency's general fund to make the general fund whole. I'm going to come up a little short because Dickie had some concerns about the vacancy eliminations that I had suggested. But that is basically my intent, is to leave these positions as they were general funded and try to find some other general fund reductions in 206. Realize that most of their general fund reductions in this whole agency were made by moving school foundation dollars in to effectuate a reduction in general fund dollars.
And then I don't think Representative Schwartz got his question answered. Would you repeat that to Representative Schwartz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Summers, I just wanted you to repeat what the 200 series reduction was to Unit 1102.
Mr. Chairman, and Don, can you pull up 1102? But I believe it is a 200 series unit, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes. Unit 1102 appears on page 25. And I believe what Representative Summers did was he identified the unobligated balance, which amounted to 124,915, I believe is your number, and eliminates that amount. Although not specified, I believe all of this gets biennialized, both the 124, the 25,000 in the 900 series, and of course, the positions are one-year cuts that would become two-year cuts, if I'm correct.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And this is some of their 200 series operational. If you, Mr. Chairman, if you look, yeah, that's correct.
Does that answer your question, Representative Schwartz?
Part of it, I mean, I guess if, Mr. Chairman, thank you. If I understand, so the unobligated part is the 124, but it will then biennialize. So basically there's nothing left in 23-24. Is that correct?
Don?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schwartz, I believe that is correct. I think there would be like $10,000 remaining.
And Mr. Chairman, the reason I pick on this 200 series is agencies have the ability to move 200 series throughout their agency without B11s. So it was expedient.
Representative
I think the fundamental question is, do we want to shift those positions from general fund to school foundation?
Go ahead, Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, so Representative Summers, just a question. I've got Unit 1102, it's 124,915, Unit 1105, 50,000. In Unit 1101, what's the price tag on that? What's the dollar value for Unit 1101 in this motion?
Mr. Chairman, 1101 is not in this. Those vacancies, I don't know where they resided. And so the position Dickie brought in, I don't know what unit it comes out of, to be honest. He just sent that. It's a 0103 or 0103 position. Oh, it's in unit 1231. And then the other general fund, he just said 100 series, basically just 93,744.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
I don't
Paul,
think
so what's the dollar value then on that Series 100 cut?
Don, do you have, Mr. Chairman, Don, do you have the new total based upon the changes to the vacancies?
Mr. Chairman, I have the 100 series cut being an annual number of 266,795.
And Mr. Chairman, Don, how far away on the general fund side am I from balancing my swap? In other words, I know I'm short, but I don't know how short.
You know how
Don, I
short you
think
are,
you're
Albert.
mute, Mr. Chairman.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. I believe your $50,000 900 series is 25,000 this year, biennializing to 50. Is that correct? If that is the case,
Correct.
You're only halfway there, but you're only halfway
There you
to
go.
84.
So, Mr. Chairman, this motion would result in an increase in general fund dollar spending. And we could do that one or two ways. We could do my elimination and bring in school foundation, or I'll let you all either approve this, defeat it, or amend it, Mr. Chairman.
Committee members, this is beginning to look a lot like our budget schematic. I don't know where the spending policy fits into all this, or the guarantees, or all the tips, but I'm sure they're in there someplace. But anyway, committee, any more questions on the motion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. If you understand it. If you don't understand it, don't raise your hand. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6. All those opposed? No. Raise your hand. Motion passes 6-4. I did not get set. Are we missing somebody from the House? I didn't have, and then I see Senator Bebel's back. Let's vote again. All those in favor, raise your hand. 5, 6. There it is. All right, 7. All those against, raise your hand. Seven, 4. We're missing Senator Agar. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure Dickie's listening. And so, if there's some critical, if there's some critical things that where I screwed up, or that are gonna, we also recognizing we need to do cuts, both general fund and school foundation. But if there's something that's critical, he can get back to me and I will try to rectify that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Don, where are we at?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other motions on page 23, the finance unit, the next unit for your consideration appears on page 25, operations unit 1102.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments. Next section.
Mr. Chairman, page 28, information management unit 1104.
Committee amendments? No amendments. Continue.
Page 31, state superintendent and leadership unit 1105.
Committee amendments? No amendments. Continue, Don.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit appears on page 34, unit 1203, communications.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments. Continue.
Page 37, St. Stephen's Indian School, Unit 1213.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 40 or 39 and 40, State System of Support, Unit 1225.
Any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 43 and 44, School Improvement and Accountability, Unit 1231.
Any amendments? No
Mr.
amendments,
Chairman,
continue.
I believe there is a inquiry on this unit.
Committee, any amendments? We're on page 39.
Page 43.
43. Committee, any amendments?
Mr. Chairman, just to prod, there has been interest in that 184,747 of school foundation program funding.
Committee, no amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman.
Representative Summers.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you'll all recall, if we go back, Mr. Chairman, and Don helped me find this, but Mr. Chairman, I believe that's on page 41. If you want, if the body wants to, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me okay? I guess my mic's not good today.
Yeah, when you lean away from your screen, we kind of lose you when you're
So,
talking.
Mr. Chairman, on page 41, you can see the swap. This wasn't a swap of, when they originally made this motion, they actually added more shortfall to the school foundation program. This wasn't part of the 884. This was standalone. I guess we've cut enough. If you want to leave this swap, I'm fine with it. But Mr. Chairman, I just didn't like that. So I guess my motion is to deny the Gov's rec, but it does add to the general fund. Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it alone. All
right, committee, any more questions on this unit? Don, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration is on page 49, Vision Outreach Services, Unit 1303.
Committee, any amendments? No amendments, continue.
Page 56. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, there has, I should at least note this, on page 49, the Vision Outreach Services, there had been some inquiry about the Talking Books program by some members.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I would like to make a motion to reinsert $70,000 general fund for the Talking Books program. And if I get a second, I'll explain what I have going on here.
Second.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you'll remember my first motion of the day yesterday, I reduced $70,000 from the governor's office in a couple different series there. And so then I'm reinserting that. So net to the general fund, it is zero. Just a different place to spend the money. As I said yesterday, I think the Talking Books program is extremely valuable for people around the state of Wyoming. And if we can continue the program without an increase in general fund expenditure overall, which is what I accomplished with this second half of the swap, I think it's great for the people of Wyoming. So this is the reinsertion of that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my guess is that the governor won't mind paying for Talking Books.
Any
Mr.
any other
Chairman,
discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Kinski.
I'd ask Representative Walters if you could educate me a little bit. 40 years ago, Talking Books, I get it, that the only people that were there were those who blind. And now there's apps, there's audio books, there's all kinds of apps where, it's millions of books are available that are talking books. What does this program provide that the marketplace is not already providing? Just help me understand.
Mr. Chairman, this helps those people find those apps. You know, many of these people taking advantage of this program are elderly, so may not have computers, may not have smartphones, may need more help finding those services. Braille books, large print books, audio books, all of those things are part of this. It's not just the audio component and the app component. It's the other components that go with. Talking books is more of a program, and included within that program then is where you have the Braille books and the large print books, and as well as audio books, audio magazines, larger print music for folks that want to play the piano and can't read it. And so it aids in all of those scenarios.
Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just might add that throughout the course of the budget discussions, I've heard probably the most on this, actually, including constituents right here in Sheridan. So I would certainly encourage a yes vote on this.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add, it's also music. I know I have enough trouble reading regular music notation. Getting it in larger form would help me immensely.
Committee, any more discussion? Dawn.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification on the motion. It's 70,000 even, not the 7690, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. 70,000 even, as 70,000 even is what I reduced in the governor's budget yesterday. I figure they can take a haircut of $690 and still operate the program.
Committee, any more discussion? Question, Representative Walters, I have is when I look through the budget, even when we get done, there's still $1.27 million in the budget. Is this $70,000 going to make any difference when you got a $2.3 million budget anyway? Couldn't the department cover that shortfall someplace else?
Mr. Chairman, I suppose they could. They have chosen to eliminate this program as part of their reductions. And what I am proposing here is to not eliminate the program and pay for it with general funds out of a different location within the budget. Had they felt they could, I would suspect that they have already obligated those and encumbered those dollars, remaining dollars within this budget item somewhere else. And so I can't speak for the agency, but they chose to reduce this program and eliminate this program because they didn't feel they had the funding available within that existing amount that you reference. So that is why I take a general fund neutral position of reducing it somewhere else and adding it back here to keep this program in place.
Dawn, what would be the procedure if we wanted an agency to continue a program and then direct them to find the funding within that division? Is that something we could do in a 300 series?
Mr. Chairman, you could footnote this agency and insist upon not less than $70,000 shall be expended for purposes of the Talking Books program or some description thereof. That would require the agency to identify $70,000 elsewhere in their budget.
Yeah, and I just looked through their budget and I see they took absolutely no reductions in their in-state or out-of-state travel, vehicles, support services. I think we all realize that travel has pretty much been reduced across the board for all the state agencies. Would appear to me that there might be sufficient funds in here to cover it within their existing budget, but that's not the motion. So with that, if there's no more discussion, did I get a second on that?
Yeah.
Second. I'll All those in favor of Representative Walter's motion to restore $70,000, raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item, Don.
Mr. Chairman, the next unit for your consideration is on page 55 and 56, School Support and Early Intervention, Unit 1316.
Any amendments? No amendments. Next division, Don.
Page 57, TANF, Unit 1373.
Any amendments? No amendments. Continue.
Page 60, CTE Federal Perkins, Unit 1374.
No amendments. Continue.
Page 63, USDA School Lunch, Unit 1376.
No amendments. Continue.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes Agency 206. The next agency for your consideration is 220.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Kinsley.
is it, I don't know that we took a break this morning. We might have had enough caucuses that we don't need a break, but
That was my assumption that we had enough breaks, but I'm certainly receptive to taking a 10-minute break. Representative Kenner.
I was just going to suggest a 10-minute break, Mr. Co-Chairman.
All right, 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 5 minutes after 11.
Don, were there any changes to 211?
Yeah, 211.
Yes, 211 will be the next agency up for your consideration.
All right, we'll take that up in 10 minutes.
Mr. Vice Chair, I resemble that photograph,
Which one?
the one behind you.
You resemble it?
I've been there.
It's actually riding down Ewell Creek towards Teton Park. You come in from the east off of that Hatchet Creek Road.
Yep.
And then beautiful, it's a beautiful ride in a morning that's got lots of smoke from the fires with all the colors. Sunrise on the Tetons and the smoke. So you've been there.
Long time ago, I was hunting.
That's what I was doing, looking for Fluffy.
Two
Yeah.
ridges from Eli's place.
Just over the hill, about 30 miles from Eli's place.
Which color Fluffy?
Well, we took a couple of them, those Teton County residents home.
I would encourage you to try that in Sublet instead. I much prefer that.
We took one big fluffy Buffy home, and then we took one of those critters that likes to eat on Fluffy's gut pile. So
Let me guess what that is. I think I know.
wolf. All right, we have a quorum of the committee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're ready to roll.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, Senator Kinski.
who jumped ahead of me? Go ahead. Who else? Who was?
Just go, Dave, and then we'll work around.
Well, beg the chairman's indulgence. We missed something on 205. I need to circle back to Department 205. We had an amendment, but somehow it didn't come up. It'd be page 3.
So was there any other thing, or are we ready to committee? Was there any other thing?
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering if my audio was any better now.
Seems to be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, if there's no objections, I'm going to open up agency 205.
Mr. Chairman, and I'd ask Chairman Bebout to help me out here in terms of my recollection of the numbers. But my motion, Mr. Chairman, would be with respect to the K-12 School Foundation Program, Agency 4100, to have a 5% reduction in the coming year, which would biannualize to 10% in the year thereafter. So it'd be a graduated reduction. And if I can get a second, I can explain. Second from Senator Bebout.
What page?
I'm on page 3. This is Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, page 3 of Unit 205. This is a unit that was not opened up. And so page 3, I think, is the only reference to it in the budget, but I stand ready to be corrected by staff. So hearkening back to our earlier discussion, we do have a budgetary problem. There's the general fund, which is what funds everything except K-12. And then there's the funds for K-12. And we've basically got the general fund under balance, but K-12 is still in serious difficulty. And we're on track per the projections from staff and Craig, the consensus revenue estimating group, at being in the hole by, I think, pushing close to $700 million in the 2 bienniums out. So just as Representative Summers had observed, we've got to start making reductions, and we have to do that in a gradual basis. And I've heard it from superintendents that they can adjust, but they just need time. So this would say 5% this year and then 10% the following year. But that would biannualize to 10% thereafter. And You know, the governor asked the districts to take 10%. He doesn't have the statutory authority to do it. If he'd had the authority, I think we'd be seeing a governor's rec to do the 10% that he asked. The districts are ready. They've, you know, I've certainly heard that they're prepared for the 10%. They know how they're going to achieve that. They can do that without impacting the classroom. They just need the nod from the legislature. It's the responsible thing to do. And I think if we wait, we risk wait too long to where the education deficit just grows and grows and grows. The impact on K-12 budgets could be devastating. Far better to just take a little bit at a time. That's how you eat an elephant. And I think this is a good, responsible start. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So can I get is there a second? Yeah, there was a second on that.
Mr. Chairman.
So let me see if I can reiterate the motion as I understand it. So the motion would be to go into department number 205 under the 4100 object code, which is the school foundation program, and reduce that by 5% for the second half of this biennium. And then that would biennialize after that. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee questions, Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the percentages. Could you help me understand the dollars that percentage would represent?
Just slightly under 9 million is what I had. Is that correct, Don?
Mr. Chairman, 90 million.
90 million.
And
Mr. Chair, $1.8 billion budget. Representative Kenner?
Yeah, so follow up. So the 90 is the 5%, and then that would double to 180 the second year. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that 23-24 biennial budget, that would biennialize to $180 million reduction, correct?
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So it would remain and basically a $90 million cut each year.
Each year.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, as you and I know in the conversations, I want to make some comments as well here. You know, in the conversations we've had, 90 million, 180, 180 million in a biennium, you got a $600 million deficit. I'm willing to cut this 90 million if you're willing to tax another 90 million and we actually start solving this problem. But if we're just going to cut now and then, okay, well, maybe we'll do something later. Oh, by the way, that's another 90 million. We're going to cut another 90 million in another year. I just don't think we're getting to the solution to this. So, if this Senate is willing to create if you're willing to create a bill here in JAC and add in another 90 million in revenue to boot. In other words, we actually take $180 million bite out of the apple a year. I'm kind of willing to consider that. That's kind of goes along with where I've been in where I've kind of been in recal all along. So are you willing to create a bill here in appropriations that would tax 90 million a year as well?
Yeah, and with that, I've got another question. So Chairman Bebout. You're muted. Eli, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I appreciate Representative Summers' comments. But as I look at this and I look at the year we are in now, and we're halfway through the first half of this biennial budget, half of the first year. And as I remember from the session, we granted or increased their budget by 5%. So the fiscal year we're in right now, that started July 1 of 2020, that'll go through June 30th of 2021, they've seen a 5.2% increase in the amount of money they received. Now that doesn't count the federal dollars that we saw through the food program and other programs there, plus the 75 million extra money that came from CARES. So if Representative Summers is willing to take all that back to zero and start over where we should have been at when we left the session, then I think that's something we ought to have the conversation about. But you've got about 225 million more dollars in this first year of this this biennial budget that go through K through 12. And maybe I'm wrong on my numbers. Somebody help me out, but that's a lot of money, and you're cutting, millions and millions out of the general fund, yet you've got $250 million more money going to K through 12. And that's the disconnect that I have in terms of how we spend for K through 12.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I'm not sure whether your numbers are right. I can say the CARES Act money to schools, you think about all the food they put out for kids and families with CARES Act money and PP&E that had to go out to make our schools safe. I'm not convinced that where it really went to the educational program like this. And actually, Mr. Chair and Mr. Co-Chair, I've heard you talk many times here lately that we need to solve this with both cut and taxes. Well, I think here's your chance. Here's the appropriations chance to take a really broad-based attempt at solving this problem. And we do 90 million in cuts. We do 90 million in taxes. We can do that in a 1/2 cent, 3/4 cent sales tax. It becomes effective. It will be there for this coming year. So if you guys want to do it, let's work on this. Let's not just go one side.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the devil's always in the detail. And I have said that, and I will say it once again, we're not going to cut our way out of this nor tax our way out of it. I've said that, and I'm not being inconsistent, but it's all a matter where you start. And so if we're going to start, we ought to start where we really should have finished off. And I'm not going to argue with you about the school lunches. I think that 75 million, I got to tell you, I haven't actually looked into it to see if it all went to lunches and all kinds of different things. I think if we were to find the actual facts about it, it was probably a little bit of both. But the rest of it is where I have the problem. So if you're going to start out where you should start, then I'm in for that kind of a meaningful conversation. But if we're not, you're just kicking the can down the road, Albert, again, and you're going to have the same debate in March, April, May, June, whenever you get together. It'll be the same old, same old.
Senator Guru.
Thanks, Mr. Co-Chair. I'm in for. I agree. I think that we have to start somewhere, and I do not disagree with my friend Representative Summers at all on the need to take a two-step approach on this. I don't. But we have to take step one, and this is it. And so, and then those other discussions will come, whether that comes over. I think revenue bills usually start over in the House, from what I hear, and from when I used to serve there. And so maybe we'll see something come, and then we'll take a look at it. And I think that maybe, you never know, if people know that we're serious about cutting, then maybe they'll start to open up the thought process on the other half of this equation. But we have to start, and so that's why I'm on for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Kenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm a little bit confused by this motion. I understand the need to cut, certainly, but isn't that what the Recal committee is looking at? And aren't they going to meet Monday and Tuesday? And we have both chairmen here. And so are we saying that is going nowhere? So I'm a bit confused by this action ahead of their meetings and what they're working on.
So, and I think Mr. Co-Chairman Nicholas, when we started these hearings, had suggested that the JAC look at stepping in and taking some actions, whether it was a combination or cuts or taxes. But I think that was keyed up. But I think that would lead to answer the question for your Representative Kenner, is kind of where that process is at. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Co-Chairman Nicholas, and then I'm going to go to Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So, at the beginning of when we started this, in our discussions, it was one of my comments to the committee that at some point that the House and the Senate would get together on an amendment that would help address the budgetary shortfall on education in the event that Recal could not come up with reasonable alternatives, and that if there was an impasse between the House and the Senate when we come into session. And so it's still my intent to work on that amendment with the Senate side. I can tell you that that amendment, as we discussed, would, and as we articulated and talked about it, would be a combination of both cuts and a revenue enhancement through some type of revenue enhancement format. And that was my comments at the beginning of this. So the problem with this motion that I see is basically we're rehashing old ground, and so we're fighting a battle that we fought back in March. And so we're trying to take us back to a different playing field and start the conversation from there. And I would respectfully disagree with the numbers that my co-chair has brought up. Those are not the numbers as I understand them, number one. Number two, it also disregards some of those fundamental issues of why we acted the way we did, which did pass both the House and the Senate in terms of our constitutional directives and the basket of goods and then the presentations that were presented to us, both in recal and as these matters were debated on the floor last session. So with that, so I would respectfully oppose the motion, but I have every desire to continue down this path and have this discussion and come up with a budget amendment that will address our concerns and as much as possible the Senate's concerns. And then I think it would be worthwhile at this point, Mr. Vice Chair, for us to go into a breakout, and we'll have a little discussion about this and we'll come back.
So before we go out to a breakout, we still had another hand up that I had recognized. So Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for entertaining this motion. I just want to bring us all back to the environment we're living in. We have had parents homeschooling their children for months here. Some still are because of the policies in the schools, whether they are concerned about the virus and kids staying home, or they're concerned about the mask mandate. It works both ways. We've had small businesses that are taking hits, of which I have one. We've asked our communities to, for the greater good, take drastic measures to combat the virus. And I don't want us to, on this committee, to appear tone deaf for what our citizens are going through at this time. And so I think it's completely appropriate to be looking at the cuts before we ever speak about revenue enhancements at this moment in time, because we have taken our cuts out in the private sector and it has been very crippling. We see people facing bankruptcies. And so I would just encourage this committee to continue the good work we've begun with our budget reduction measures in this area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And go ahead, Co-Chairman Bebout.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And Mr. Co-Chairman Nicholas, let's get our numbers right. So if Matt's out there, sometimes my math is a little off, but I don't think it is in this case. But if Matt could provide that, which shows the 5.2% increase that I'm referencing to. We also have the COVID care dollars, and we also have the increases in the school federal dollars for the school lunches that's already in our program. If he could share that with us in our breakout groups, and if I'm wrong, well, I'll be the first to admit it. But if I'm right, if Bob would finally admit once that I am right, I'd appreciate that too.
Matt, I see you popped up. Do you want to take a stab at that?
Well, the issue is one-time funding versus ongoing funding as well. So you can't just pick a number.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I will email the committee the information that Senator Bebout has requested.
So Don, before we go into breakout, yeah, Don, I've got a request for you. If you could, before we break out, so I think it's always important that we have the same information and we're all working off the same information and the data. So could you pull up the white rod again on the screen and walk us where we're at for the current year, this biennium and the next biennium, because I think that helps us work with a single set of numbers. Could you do that, Don?
Yes, one moment here. Mr. Chairman, I hope I'm sharing the October 2020 Craig long-term revenue forecast, including the governor's supplemental request. Can you see that, sir?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this starts off with the current biennium that we're in, the 21-22, and it proceeds to the next biennium in the second column of numbers, and then out to the third biennium in the third column of numbers. We start with our beginning balance box, which is box 1, then the estimated revenues. Almost all of these revenues are the current Craig projections. Obviously, they are more precise in the near-term years and more subject to revision in the out years. And then the third box, number 3, includes the estimated appropriations and expenditures. When it comes to the school foundation program funding model, I'm going to jump down to footnote 4 because that specifies what our assumptions were. So to determine our future appropriations for school foundation, we assume no ECAs, flat student enrollment, annual 10% increases in health insurance, and 4% growth in the reimbursables starting in fiscal year 2020. Those reimbursements are primarily the special education and transportation. The final box is the cumulative surplus and shortfall. And I believe I would direct your attention primarily to the italicized row, 37, which shows a $307 million biennial shortfall on the school foundation program in the current biennium. This is automatically made up for by statute from a transfer to the LSRA to the extent funds are in excess of $500 million. The next biennium, that shortfall grows to $555 million. And then finally, the last biennium, it grows to $686 million. In the last biennium, the LSRA is or dips below the $500 million threshold. So in this biennium, there is insufficient funds to backstop the school foundation program. You can certainly quibble with our revenue estimates based primarily on Craig or with our assumptions on future growth of appropriations, but that is kind of the bottom line if you accept, at least for consideration purposes, those assumptions.
So Don, see if I can characterize this and then we'll go into our breakouts as Co-Chairman Nicholas suggested. So as it exists today in the current biennium, we have a $307 million structural deficit. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, and I would actually describe the structural deficit roughly $500 million, maybe give or take, because the deficit of 307 is primarily in the second year. This is because the largest revenue source is local property taxes, and they are delayed 18 months. So the first year of this biennium, school districts have not really felt the impact of the anticipated reduced property taxes, primarily from the extractive industries.
All right, Mr. Co-Chair, would you like to break into groups? Questions for Don? Don, you had something, and I'll go to your Representative Schwartz.
Mr. Chairman, I did want to clarify or ask the question. The line item that is being reduced is just for the entitlement districts. So the districts that are recapture districts would not be affected unless the intent of the motion was, for example, a 5% across the board reduction to the guarantee, in which case that would impact both the entitlement districts as well as the recapture districts. Typically, this committee would identify specific variables like you did last year with health insurance and national board certified teachers. I did not understand the motion to identify any particular component. So for purposes of our drafting, I'm going to interpret it as an across the board cut, but we will need direction as to whether that applies to just the entitlement districts. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
And Don, aren't national board certified teachers come out of the general fund, not the school foundation program?
No, Mr. Chairman, they come out of school foundation.
They do come out of school foundation. All right. Representative Schwartz, you had a question for Don, and then we're going to break out.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I've been waving my hand to comment for quite some time. If I'll wait if you insist.
No, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I was appointed to the recalibration committee. I did not have background in education. I've expended a lot of time and effort working on that committee through the summer. And I've learned a lot. And part of what I've learned is that if we're going to do cuts to K-12, it needs to be done in a context. And I believe that committee is doing good work in trying to establish what that context is within the model for K-12 education. And I really have a hard time accepting that after all the work that's being done, and hopefully a good conclusion can be reached, that this committee will just go, no, it's not, we don't need to do it that way. We're just going to take a percentage. And I don't think just taking a percentage recognizes exactly what our school districts are doing to educate our kids. So I strongly oppose this motion and the intention. It is, and its intention. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to make sure for Representative Schwartz, you're just speaking for yourself, not the recal committee, correct? For the record.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I would never speak for a committee I'm on because I know better.
All right, thank you, Representative Schwartz. Representative Summers, and then we're going to do breakout.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I think something, for my Senate partners to consider, on the guarantee, and we've talked about this in recal, the state share of it, what we have to put in, if you do a 10% of that, it's about 100 million. That equates to about a 6-point-something% cut of the guarantee. So I think one thing I would ask the Senate is, think about what dollar value your intention is to cut, and then you can back that out in a percentage guarantee. So that's just my suggestion to you. My comment, Mr. Chairman, and I'm really glad you brought up the profile, which is a $525, $550 million biennial deficit going forward. $100 million cut biennializes to 200 million, and we're still far short. And so then the assumption is if you can't agree to a tax now, you won't later. So are we going to cut all that? And so once again, if we do 100 million in cuts and 100 million in a sales tax, we get to 400 million biennially the next go around, and we take a big bite out of that apple. We actually start to solve a problem and not just, I think, pander to each side's interests. So, Mr. Chairman, I would encourage you to consider that as we go into the breakout.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ketchke.
Just very quickly, somebody made reference to hashing old fights. It's not fight. What we want is what everybody wants, the best for our students and the best for the state. I don't know the answer in the long run, Representative Summers or Chairman Nicholas or anybody else. I would like to see an elegant solution based on the model that passes all kinds of constitutional scrutiny, but we're running out of time. We haven't reduced the funding model over the last 5 years that I've been here. We had a chance to put the brakes on and avoid a fiscal meltdown. And you see the numbers where we're heading. So I don't know how, the debate about how much they were raised the last time and school lunches and cares, none of that matters because the districts get it. They know the cuts are coming. The governor asked them for 10%. They're ready to give up 10%. We can't solve all those issues, but we can at least just get started on feathering this down so that we don't crash by doing nothing. That's all I wanted to offer, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Co-Chair, would you like to still go into breakout?
Mr. Chairman, I would.
All right.
Yes.
So Karen, let's go into breakout.
Crap, we've been waiting.
Representative Walters and Larson, with you have the same backgrounds, the same haircut, the same suit, but for the glasses, I would get really confused.
We're brothers from another mother.
It's snowing here in Star Valley again. We're going to get 4 more inches today.
Yeah, it's snowing here too. They said it wasn't going to snow in town. Guess I'll be shoveling again.
They lied.
Representative Simpson, how much snow have you received this week?
Yeah.
Well, we've got about a foot on the ground.
How much this week?
About
Most of that?
9 or 10 inches of it this week.
Wow.
I don't want to talk about it, Tom. It doesn't matter what's snowing at my house, and I know it's snowing a lot more there.
And I'm guessing your buddies are sending pictures of them skiing, Andy.
You know, they've been more considerate so far this winter.
That's nice of them.
It may not last.
All right, let's reconvene. I think we've got most everybody back here. We were on Agency 205, Code 4100, School Foundation Program. Committee, any more discussion on this issue? There's a motion on the floor.
Mr. Co-Chair?
Senator Bebout.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, excuse me. I believe that Senator Kinski has a proposed amendment to that amendment. If I don't see him on the screen to deal with recapture. Is he? There he is.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make, Mr. Richards asked a question and to clarify, the way he's interpreting it is the way I meant it. All districts reduction out of the school foundation program guarantee.
All right, is everybody clear on what the motion is? All right, committee, any more discussion?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I missed that.
So the motion was clarified that it was 5% the first year out of the school foundation program for all districts through the guarantee.
So, Mr.
Representative Summer.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, give me a dollar figure for the annual and the biennial.
Don, do you have those? Because we don't have, I don't see the number. We know what the number is out of the recapture or the non-recapture districts. So what is that number?
Mr. Chairman, the total is 90 million. It's $89,999,800 annually. I'm going to round that to, because we're $200 shy of 90 million. And the biennial number would be $180 million for the biennium. Between the recapture and the entitlement districts, I don't have a specific amount, but I suspect it's about 80-20. 80% would be entitlement districts and 20% or less would be recapture district, but we'll have to crunch the numbers on that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I want to clarify all this before I want to understand, is this a cut to the guarantee? So is it an equal cut to each district? And so based upon last year, I want to know the numbers. And if we don't have the numbers, Mr. Chairman, I don't know how we could even possibly vote on it.
Well, I think if it was a 5%, it would be equitable across the board. But Don, what's your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, I will defer. I think Matt has some more specific.
All right, Matt, I see you popped up on me. You snuck up in the corner.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. using our Craig estimates of the foundation program guarantee, a 5% reduction would be approximately $76 million. How I interpret that, it would be a 5% reduction to all districts uniformly. That would be my understanding of the intent of the motion, is that it's a 5% reduction to each school district's guarantee for next school year. And then that 5% would increase to for the biennium for the following 23-24 biennium.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's 76 million a year, basically, something like that.
Mr. Chairman, since this would be contained in the budget bill, the Department of Education would come back in the 23-24 biennium based on current law, and they obviously would have an exception request to increase it to the current law. I'm not sure if the intent is that it's 5% of the guarantee going forward or only 76 million going forward. I think that may need to be clarified as well.
That was my question as well, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman,
Senator Kinski.
I expressed it as a percentage going forward rather than as a dollar figure.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just voice some concern that I've had in this proposal, I would do so with the precursor that I support the need for cuts in education in the model. I just believe that we have to do that. But procedurally on this, we've heard in this committee from both chairmen that we need to send these bills out to committees where they belong. And so we have a recalibration committee out there working on this very topic. And we're going to usurp, and many of you serve on that committee, but we're usurping what that committee is doing right now by jumping the gun and say, these are the cuts we're going to make without bringing the recommendations back from that committee and letting us have the opportunity to evaluate, determine, and do it. So we're kind of kicking that aside and say that work that you've done all interim really doesn't matter. This committee is going to go ahead and put these cuts into place. I just personally, I struggle with that. I don't think that's the right way to do. I don't think that this amendment was as thought out as it needed to be for the implications it's going to have. An example being is we come into this division, it's the school foundation program, but we find out that the initial recommendation is on the entitlement districts only. Now you've corrected that, but it tells me that the research and understanding the implications and how it's going to be implemented has not been as thoroughly researched as it needs to be for what we're doing to school districts around the state. I think that we've got to get our cuts in place, but I think we have to be right about it. And so that's my concern, and that's why I would vote against it.
Senator Bevell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and I appreciate those comments as well as all the good discussion on this. But have we had this conversation over the last 3 or 4 years? Sure we have. And it always comes down to the same kind of an end result where we really have loggerheads, we don't agree, and we just don't solve any of the problems. We sort of, and I've said it, we kick the can. And I've been blessed in my business career of 40 plus years to have been able to make a living in Wyoming, and there haven't been that many good years. Representative Larson, you know what I'm talking about. And when you make money, fortunate enough to make money, you pay off your debt and you save a little. But all the bad years, when you have no revenues to cover your costs, what you do is you don't go out and just raise your rates. You have to make the cuts. So as a person in business, as a family man with my family, it just makes good sense that you take a look at the reduction side first, because you never know on the revenue side, and in business, you sure don't know that. Of course, in the state, it's other people's money and we just go spend it. But I would just ask that you consider that part of it as businessmen, prudent businessmen. Representative Summers, your family's been in the agriculture business for years, and I know they haven't all been great. And when you make money, you do just what I did, and when you're short, you do what I've talked about. So just from that perspective, numbers don't lie. And all I'm saying is, and maybe this isn't perfect, Representative Larson, but it's a start. And, you know, we're going to do recal next week. We'll see what happens. I think most of us have a good idea. And I will close with saying, I still do not feel we can cut our way out of this or spend our way out of it. But to me, the way I've been trained and lived my life, you start with the reductions first. And with that, I'm through with the K through 12. Thank you very much.
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarifying question for Senator Kinski and perhaps Matt Wilmarth as well. So the price tag on this motion as amended is now $76 million in 1 year, biennialized to 152. And the reason that it's less than the $89 million we discussed earlier, I guess, is because that small districts get more money, and that's why, but the motion is worth sort of less money. The cuts are less now than they were 20 minutes ago. Is that right?
Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Stiff. Since this is a 5% reduction, the intent is 5% going forward. The $76 million will likely increase as the foundation program guarantee is estimated to increase in the 23-24 biennium based upon the assumptions Don reviewed in the long-term profile. Reimbursements are slated to increase 4% annually, health insurance increases. And so the 76 million is the 5% for next school year. And we would have to run those numbers to see what that 5% would be going forward in the 23-24 biennium.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Summers.
So, Mr. Chairman, a question to you, Matt. Assumptions have been made with what ADM going forward for next year, and actually what were the reductions in, or what was the ADM report? So your assumptions going forward were based on what, and what is the actual ADM?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Summers. The enrollment or the ADM assumed in our forecast is a flat enrollment, meaning no growth, no decrease. Actual enrollments this school year decreased 2% statewide. However, the model ADM, which uses the greater of a district's prior year ADM or their 3-year average, the model ADM is essentially flat. It's about a 30 student decrease. That has essentially zero impact on our funding estimates from our October CRAG to now.
Committee, any more questions? All right, I'm just going to kind of close this out, but kind of playing off, and I think we all recognize the gravity of the issue that we're faced with. You know, I'm hearkened by the idea that at some point you got to start. I don't know where the right start is. Maybe it's a combination, maybe it isn't. But even if we were to implement this, this is it is a very small step forward. And let me illustrate by what I mean. So if we look at the growth in K through 12 and what Matt just said, that's figured into the cost in the next biennium going forward. A 6% annual increase in cost or biennial increase in cost. This is a 5% reduction. This doesn't even keep up with the rate of growth for K through 12. It's not even the equivalent of just flattening the rate of growth. And so whether it's the right step forward or the wrong step forward, I don't have the answer for that. I know we need to move forward. And I think this is the first step, but make no bones about it. Even if we had a commensurate level of tax increases here to offset this, we're still looking at substantial $400 million structural deficit in this budget. So the question becomes to the committee, do we want to start head down this road now or not? And so to me, I think we all recognize we've got to do something. This was a first effort to try to take that step just to flatten the rate of growth. But with that, I think this was a productive debate. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and take the call. All those in favor of Senator Kinski's motion, raise your hand. Those opposed? Same sign. Motion fails 7-4. Dawn, I think what we'll do, because we reopened this agency, it is now just a few minutes after 12 o'clock. I think we'll recess for lunch for 1 hour, and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock. Dawn, anything that we need to be ready for when we come back, or any comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, the next agency on your agenda will be 211.
All right, we'll see you.